Okay, let's unpack this. We talk about failure in business a lot on this show. We
Wow.
talk about pivoting. We talk about the lean startup methodology, failing fast.
Mm-hmm.
But today we are not talking about a normal failure. We aren't talking about a lemonade stand that didn't quite
No,
work
no,
out.
we're definitely not. This is a different category altogether.
Today we are talking about a failure so spectacular, so expensive, and just so incredibly fast that it became a legend. It's the kind of story that business schools use to scare freshmen. We are talking about Boo.com.
That name, for anyone who lived through the dot-com bubble of the late 90s, it instantly conjures up a very specific feeling.
Right. What is that feeling?
It's a mix of nostalgia, disbelief, and maybe a little bit of secondhand embarrassment. It's just iconic.
Exactly. It's synonymous with the dot-com bubble bursting.
Yeah.
But here is the mission for this deep dive, and I want everyone to really listen to this number because it defies the laws of physics. We're going to figure out how a single company managed to burn through $135 million of venture capital
$135 million.
in just 18 months.
It is a staggering figure. And you have to remember, this is late 90s money with inflation that's significantly more today. But even then, just raw cash, that is a mountain of money to just, vaporize.
In 18 months. That is, I've done the math, and we will get to the specific burn rates later, but just on the surface, that is financial immolation.
It is.
It's not just a business closing its doors, it's a catastrophe.
Yeah.
It's like watching a train wreck, but the train is made of gold bars.
It is, but I think it's really important to frame this correctly before we dive in, because if we just look at it as stupid people spending money, we miss the actual lesson here.
Yeah.
This is a case study in what the economist Robert Shiller called irrational exuberance. It's a story about timing, about the disconnect between technological ambition and the actual, the infrastructure that existed at the time.
Right. It's about trying to build a Ferrari when the roads are still made of dirt.
Precisely. That's a perfect analogy. And to guide us through this, we are looking at a stack of historical records, various postmortems written by people who were actually there, and specifically the founder's own account from their book, Boohoo.
Boo-hoo. Great title.
Chuckles, it is.
Mhm.
So we're piecing together the rise and fall of this British e-commerce business to understand not just what went wrong, but why everyone, and I mean everyone, thought it was going so right until the very last second.
So let's rewind. Let's go back to the late 90s. The internet is the Wild West. Money is falling from the sky for anyone with a .com in their name.
And the sound of a dial-up modem is in every home.
That screech. And onto this stage walk our three protagonists. The Golden Children, as they were called. Who were they?
So at the center of the storm, you have a Swedish trio, Ernst Malmsten, Kaj Leander, and Patrick Hedelin. And here is where it gets really interesting. And this is crucial for understanding why they got so much money.
Okay.
They weren't novices. They weren't just three kids in a garage with a big idea.
They weren't just random kids with a PowerPoint presentation and a dream.
No,
Hmm.
not at all. In the eyes of investors, they were sophisticated internet entrepreneurs. And that's because before Boo.com, they had already built a company called Bocus.com.
Bocus.com. I'm sensing a branding theme here. The .com was the key.
Very similar branding approach, yeah. Bocus.com was an online bookstore. You can think of it as the Amazon of Scandinavia.
And was it successful?
Very. In 1997, it became the third largest book e-retailer.
Yeah.
They built it, it was a success, and they sold it. They had an exit.
Okay, so that explains a lot. That's everything. They walk into a boardroom, they put their resume on the table, and they can say, look, we've already done this. We beat the odds once. Give us more money for a bigger idea.
Exactly. They had a proven track record. In a world where investors were throwing money at people who just had a vague idea written on a napkin, these three had a real, tangible success story under their belts.
Right.
That credibility is what unlocked the vault. You have to put yourself in the mindset of a venture capitalist in 1998 or 1999. Their biggest fear is not losing money.
Their biggest fear is missing the next big thing.
It's FOMO, fear of missing out. Massive FOMO. So when these three walk in, looking cool, looking European, fashionable, with a success story already finished, the checkbooks just opened almost automatically.
So they have the credibility. What was the vision this time? Because they didn't want to sell books again. They wanted something, I guess, sexier.
No, books were too small, too utilitarian. I mean, books are easy to ship. They don't spoil. They don't have sizes. They're simple.
A solved problem almost.
Right. The vision for Boo.com was to become the premier global online sports and fashion retailer. They didn't want to be a digital catalog. They wanted to build a lifestyle brand.
And who are they targeting with this? Who was the customer?
The demographic was very, very specific. Young, wealthy, fashionable people. Basically, the 18 to 24-year-old crowd who had disposable income and cared deeply about looking good. The cool kids.
It sounds less like a store and more like an exclusive club.
That was 100% the vibe they were going for. They wanted to be the place where the cool kids shopped online. But here is the kicker, and this is one of the first major strategic decisions that arguably set them on the path to ruin.
Yeah.
Think about Amazon for a second. We mentioned them. How did Amazon start?
Books. Just books.
Yeah.
And mostly just in the U.S. initially, right? It was a very focused launch.
Exactly. Jeff Bezos was obsessed with logistics. He started with books because they were a simple, uniform product. He mastered the U.S. market before he even thought about crossing the Atlantic. It was slow. It was methodical expansion.
So what did Boo.com do?
They decided to launch in Europe and America simultaneously.
On day one.
On day one. Global domination from the opening bell.
That's beyond ambitious.
Yeah.
That sounds almost impossible.
It's incredibly difficult. Let's just, break down what that actually means. If you decide to launch in the US, the UK, Germany, France, Sweden, and Finland all on the same day, what are you actually dealing with operationally?
Well, languages for one. The site has to work in German, French, English, Swedish. That's a huge translation job.
Correct. But that's just the interface, the easy part. Think about the back end. Currencies.
Right. The euro wasn't in physical circulation yet.
Exactly. The euro exists as a financial concept, but people in France are spending francs. People in Germany are spending Deutsche Marks. People in Italy are spending lira. You need a payment processing system that handles all of that in real time.
And taxes.
VAT, value-added tax. Every single country in Europe has different tax rules, different rates. And then you have consumer protection laws. The return policy required by law in Germany is completely different from the one in the U.S.
So by saying day one global, they didn't just build one company. They effectively tried to launch, 6 or 7 different startups on the same day, all tied together by a website that didn't even exist yet.
That is the perfect way to put it. They multiplied their complexity by a factor of 10, maybe more, just for the vanity of being able to say, we are a global company from day one. It was an operational nightmare from the jump.
And speaking of vanity, let's talk about the name. I found this little nugget in the research hilarious. They didn't even want Boo.com originally, did they?
No, not at all. The original Heart's Desire was Bo.com. BOO.com.
As in, inspired by Bo Derek, the actress.
That's the story. They wanted that Hollywood glamour. They wanted a name that sounded like a supermodel, short, chic.
But I'm guessing Bo.com was already taken.
It was. And the owner probably wanted a fortune for it, even back then. So they pivoted. They just, added a note. They found a dealer selling Boo.com, and they bought it for $2,500.
Which, honestly, for a 3-letter domain name, even then, $2,500 is a steal compared to what they spent on everything else.
It was probably the most efficient money they ever spent in the entire 18 months. In today's market, a 3-letter domain like that could be hundreds of thousands, maybe millions. So, yeah, good deal there.
Okay, so they have the name, they have the famous founders, they have this insane global ambition. Now, let's talk about the execution, or more accurately, the spending. We have to talk about the burn.
The burn is legendary. It's what makes Boo.com a business school case study. It's just mind-boggling.
Let's start with the headquarters. If you're a scrappy startup, where do you set up shop? A garage, a cheap office park, maybe a sublet basement somewhere.
If you are Amazon, you famously use a door on sawhorses as a desk to save money. If you are Boo.com, you set up your global headquarters on Carnaby Street in London.
Carnaby Street. That's not a tech hub. That's the historic heart of swinging London fashion. That is prime, expensive real estate.
Exactly. It was a statement. A fashionable address for a fashionable company. They weren't building a tech utility, they were building a brand. And the office culture, by all accounts, reflected that. There are stories about the Guru Room.
The Guru Room, what's that?
A dedicated meditation space in the office. They had fresh fruit delivered daily for everyone. They had a concierge service for employees to help them book, theater tickets and dinner reservations.
Concierge?
Yeah.
For startup employees?
Yes. It was the absolute height of .com excess. They were spending money to project an image of success before they had earned a single dollar of profit.
It sounds like they were playing business rather than actually doing business.
In a way, yes, it was about the image, and the staffing reflected that explosion. They started with about 40 employees, a tight ship.
Manageable. Normal.
But by October 1999, just as they were ramping up to launch, they had 400 employees.
400. Across how many offices?
8 offices: London, Amsterdam, Munich, New York, Paris, Stockholm. They were staffing up these global hubs before they had even sold a single pair of sneakers.
That is a massive, massive overhead. You're paying rent in Midtown Manhattan and Central Paris with no revenue.
And salaries. And not just minimum wage. They were hiring cool people. They were poaching editors from top fashion magazines, photographers, stylists, people who expected a certain lifestyle and a certain salary.
But the thing that really blew my mind, the statistic that I had to read 3 times just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating, was the marketing spend.
The pre-launch marketing.
How much did they spend on advertising and PR before the website was even live and able to take an order?
$25 million.
$25 million. Before they sold a product, before the doors even opened. That is just, I can't wrap my head around that.
Think about the psychology of that. You are creating this immense global hype. You have glossy full-page ads in Vanity Fair and Vogue. You have TV spots directed by Roman Coppola.
Francis Ford Coppola's son.
Yeah.
They hired Hollywood royalty to make commercials for a website.
Yes. And the commercials were completely abstract. They were just vibes. They didn't really show the website. They just showed beautiful people and beautiful locations doing beautiful things. They were selling a membership to a club that didn't exist yet.
So imagine you're the target customer. You see an ad for the coolest store in the world, you get all excited, and then you realize you can't actually go in yet. It's not open.
That was the experience for months, and it was all based on this land grab mentality. You have to remember the era. The prevailing wisdom of the dot-com bubble was get big fast.
Right.
The idea was that the internet is a winner-take-all market. So if you can establish the brand first, you win everything. Profits. That's a problem for 2005. The only thing that matters right now is capturing the mind share first.
That's but spending $25 million. That puts a ticking clock in your back that has to be deafening. If you spend that much telling people you are amazing, you'd better be absolutely perfect on day one.
Exactly. You are writing a check that your technology has to cash. If you tell me you are the greatest store on earth for 6 months, and then I finally log on and I get a generic error message or a loading screen, the disappointment is 10 times worse than if you had just been humble.
It creates this massive expectation gap.
A chasm. And that brings us to the overall financial picture. We mentioned the $135 million total burn in 18 months, but let's look at the velocity of that burn.
Okay.
In just 6 months, one 6-month period, they burned through 125 million pounds.
Wait, pounds. So that's even more in dollars.
Yes. So that's, what, about $170 million at the time? In 6 months.
I don't even know how you physically write checks that fast. Did they have a bonfire in the Carnaby Street office and just throw cash in it?
It comes down to operational excess and just chaos. It wasn't just the ads. It was the out-of-control payroll. The post-mortem suggests there was a total lack of direction regarding how many staff were actually needed. It was hiring for the sake of hiring.
We are a big global company, therefore we need 400 people.
That was the logic. Plus, terrible communication between departments meant money was just leaking everywhere. Different offices buying their own software, duplicating work. It was a mess.
So you have a massive staff, a massive ad budget, and massive office rent. But you're an e-commerce company. The one thing you really, really need to nail, the only thing you really need to nail is the website, the technology.
And this is where the tragedy really sets in. This is the heart of the failure. We call this the technology trap.
The outline calls it ambition versus reality. And I think that is perfect because their ambition was Star Trek and the reality was, well, 1999.
Yes.
Tell me about Miss Boo.
Miss Boo. She was the mascot, but she was more than that. She was conceived as a sales assistant-style avatar designed to guide users through the site. She was animated. She had a personality.
Like a digital personal shopper.
A much cooler
version of Clippy the Paperclip from Microsoft Word.
Labs. Yes, a fashion-forward Clippy, exactly.
No.
And alongside her, they developed this revolutionary 3D dressing room technology. The idea was that you could literally drag and drop clothes onto a 3D model and inspect them from any angle.
So you could zoom in on the stitching, spin the shoe around to see the heel,
Exactly. All of that.
which, to be fair, sounds awesome. In
Yeah.
2025, we have that. I use that all the time on retail sites. It's great.
We do. It's standard now. But we did not have that in 1999. They were trying to build 2025 technology using 1999 tools and for a 1999 audience.
Talk to me about the cost of this coolness. What did it cost to build this?
The development costs for this proprietary virtual technology was over $6 million. They built their own 3D rendering engine from scratch.
$6 million just for the code.
Yes, but the maintenance cost.
Oh.
This is the kicker. It cost $500,000 every single month just to keep that 3D tech running.
Wait, let me just pause you there. $500,000 a month just to keep the virtual dressing room open.
Per month, yes. Because this wasn't simple HTML code. This was incredibly server intensive. Every time a single user spun a shoe, a server somewhere in London had to crunch a huge amount of numbers and send a stream of images back to them. They needed a massive bank of servers and a team of very specialized, very expensive engineers just to keep it online.
Put that in context for me. If I'm a traditional retailer in 1999, what does $500,000 a month get me?
That's the lease on a flagship store on Fifth Avenue in New York City, and the staff to run it. And Boo.com was spending that on a single digital feature that, and this is the most crucial part, most of their customers couldn't even load.
And this is where we had to get technical for a second. We have to talk about the pipe.
We do. We have to talk about bandwidth, the fundamental limitation of the era.
For our younger listeners, or for anyone who has blocked out the trauma, can you please describe the internet experience in 1999?
Okay, so you didn't have Wi-Fi. You didn't have fiber. You had a beige box in the corner of the room, your desktop computer. You plugged a phone cord from the computer into the phone jack on the wall, your only phone line.
So no one could call the house while you were online.
No one. You clicked connect, and you heard a sound, a very specific sound. Ear ding ding dong.
Song of my people. I can hear it now.
That sound is the sound of a 56K modem establishing a connection, 56 kilobits per second. To put that in modern terms, downloading a single high-quality photo from Instagram today would take you about 30 to 40 seconds on that correction.
Painful. Absolutely painful.
Now, Boo.com built a site that was 100% reliant on heavy code, specifically JavaScript and Flash. Flash was this animation software that was notorious for being incredibly heavy and slow to load. To load just the front page of Boo.com, you were downloading megabytes of data.
So I'm at home, I hear the ad on the radio, I type in boo.com, and then what happens?
You wait, you just see a loading bar, maybe you go make a cup of tea, you come back, it's still loading. We're talking minutes, not seconds.
And they knew this was a problem, right? There was literally a warning on the site.
Yes. Right on the front page, in small text, it had a warning. This site is designed for 56K modems and above.
And above, it's very optimistic for 1999.
It was excluding anyone with an older, slower connection, which was still a lot of people. But even if you had the top-of-the-line 56K modem, it was unbearably sluggish.
Imagine standing outside a Gap and the door's locked for 5 minutes while they load the store layout inside. You just walk away.
You would, and people did. The bounce rates were huge. And even if you were patient enough to get in, the interface itself was deeply flawed. Because they wanted to control the look so precisely, they used a fixed-size window.
What does that mean, a fixed size window?
It means the website didn't fill your whole screen. It popped up in this little designated square, maybe 800 by 600 pixels. And because they filled that tiny square with Miss Boo and the 3D dressing room and all this branding, there was almost no room left for the actual product information. The price, the description, the sizes, it was all crammed into a tiny corner.
So I'm waiting 5 minutes to see a tiny picture of a shoe with no information next to it.
Pretty much. And the navigation, it was a nightmare. It was a hierarchical system that forced you to click through multiple menus.
Give me an example. Walk me through buying something.
Okay, so say you want a running vest. You click Sport. Wait for the page to load. You click Running, wait for it to load. Click Apparel, wait again. Click Vests, wait again.
I'm already bored just listening to this.
And here's the punchline. You finally get to the page with the vest.
Yeah.
You find your size in a drop-down menu. You select it. And only then, after all those clicks, does the system check the inventory database.
Oh, no.
And it comes back with a message, out of stock.
And then, what do I do then?
You have to start over. Go all the way back to the sport category and begin the whole process again. There was no back button that worked properly.
That is user hostile? That is actively fighting your customer who is trying to give you money.
It violated every basic rule of usability. It truly sounds like they built a website for the computers and internet speeds of 2005, but they launched it on the infrastructure of 1999. They ignored the reality of the last mile into people's homes.
They built a beautiful 3D interactive swimming pool, but they forgot that everyone coming to visit only had a drinking straw to experience it with.
That's it. That's the perfect summary of the tech failure.
So we have the insane burn rate, we have the terrible technology, we have frustrated users.
Yeah.
Now we get to the crash. The launch finally happens.
Autumn 1999. And it happens after what the press called highly publicized delays, which already makes people nervous. It makes investors nervous.
And because of those delays, that massive ad campaign, remember that $25 million spend? A lot of it ran while the site wasn't even ready.
Yes, this is a classic coordination failure. The marketing team booked the magazine spreads and the TV spots months in advance. The tech team slipped the deadline by months. So the ads run. People see the ad, they get curious, they go to the URL, and they see a holding page, a coming soon sign.
That's money literally set on fire. You paid millions of dollars to send people to a closed door.
And by the time the site actually launched, a lot of that initial buzz had started to turn into skepticism. The press started asking, so well, what's the problem? Does this thing actually work?
And then the world turned. The entire macroeconomic environment shifted under their feet.
The dot crash, Q2 of 2000, April specifically. The NASDAQ, which is the stock market index where all these tech stocks live, just fell off a cliff. The bubble burst.
Why does that matter so much for a private company like Boo? They weren't on the stock market yet.
Because their entire business plan, their entire philosophy relied on an endless supply of venture capital. They were losing money on every single sale, burning millions a month in overhead. They assumed that they could just keep raising more money, a Series B, a Series C, a Series D, until they eventually went public in an IPO and everyone got rich.
So they're basically a patient hooked up to a money IV drip.
And the NASDAQ Q crash ripped the IV out of their arm. Investors suddenly got terrified. They looked at their portfolios, saw they were down 50% in a month, and said, no more risky bets, no more companies with zero profits and a crazy burn rate. The funding freeze hit Boo instantly.
But were they selling anything? I mean, with all these problems, was there any revenue coming in at all?
They were, and that's the real tragic irony of the story. The sales were actually growing rapidly. In the final fortnight before they closed their doors, they sold $500,000 worth of product.
Wow. So that's $1 million a month run rate. That's not nothing. That proves the core idea that people wanted to buy clothes online.
It does. The concept was right. But the expenses were eating them alive. And there was one specific killer in the logistics that was bleeding them dry. Returns.
Returns are always a headache in retail, especially fashion.
Boo offered free returns for customers, which is great for the user, right? It builds trust. But Boo was paying their logistics supplier, Deutsche Post, for every single one of those returns.
And because people couldn't really see the product well on the site because the 3D model was blurry or the color was off on their old CRT monitor.
The return rate was much higher than they expected. So every time someone sent a jacket back, Boo paid for the shipping both ways and lost the sale. Every single return was just cash bleeding out of the company.
It's the classic unit economics problem, the old joke. We lose money on every sale, but we'll make it up in volume.
And as that joke proves, that never, ever works.
So the money runs out May 18, 2000.
Receivership. Liquidation. It was over.
18 months. Yeah. $135 million.
Yeah.
Gone.
Gone, up in smoke.
So let's look at the aftermath. The dust settles. Who got hurt the most here?
Well, the list of losers is very long. The biggest single financial loser was a fund called Omnia, which was backed by the wealthy Hariri family. They invested nearly 20 million pounds.
Poof.
Gone. Completely wiped out. Then you have the creditors.
Who are they?
Mostly the ad agencies. They were owed about 12 million pounds. I never saw most of that money. Which is just deeply ironic. The very people who built the hype were the ones left holding the bag at the end.
And the people. The 400 staff members.
Made redundant immediately. And the reports from the Times say many of them hadn't been paid in the last couple of months leading up to the crash. They were working on promises and hope.
Wow.
Imagine showing up to that fancy Carnaby Street office every day, seeing the fresh fruit bowls in the guru room, but your own bank account is empty because your paycheck hasn't come.
That is just devastating.
Then came the fire sale. This is where the numbers get truly, truly depressing.
Yeah.
They had to sell off the parts of the carcass to pay back whatever tiny fraction they could.
All right, so another company, fashionmall.com, swooped in and bought the brand, the URL, and Ms. Boo.
Yes, they got the brand assets. But the technology, the thing they spent millions and millions building, that proprietary 3D engine,
Who bought that?
a company called BrightStation, which was led by an entrepreneur named Dan Wagner. And you know how much they paid for it?
I have a feeling it's a shockingly low number.
$250,000.
Wait, pause. They spent over $6 million developing it. They spent $500,000 a month maintaining it. And they sold it for $250,000.
Yes. Pennies on the dollar. It was basically a rounding error.
That has to be one of the worst depreciation events in the history of technology.
But here's the supreme irony. Dan Wagner took that technology, he stripped away all the bloated Miss Boo stuff and the terrible user interface, and he used the core rendering engine to build a new company called Venda Inc.
Okay.
Venda provided e-commerce back-end technology to other big retailers,
Yep.
and Venda was later acquired by NetSuite for $50 million.
Oh, that hurts. That hurts physically to hear.
It proves that the technology, the core of it, was good. It was valuable. But the business model they wrapped around it, the huge staff, the insane ads, the immediate global launch, it was all toxic. The engine was a Ferrari engine, but they put it in a bus made of solid gold and tried to drive it through a swamp.
So what was the total earned from selling off all the assets?
Less than $2 million. They burned through $135 million and recovered less than $2 million.
Wow. And the postmortem started appearing pretty much immediately, right? People wanted to know what happened.
They did. Tristan Louie, who is the former interim CTO, wrote one of the first big online postmortems of a tech company. It was fascinating because it was one of the first times we saw a tech insider just dismantle a failure in public like that. He laid out all the technical arrogance.
And the founder, Ernst Malmsten, he didn't hide either.
No, to his credit, he wrote that book, Boohoo, a .com story from concept to catastrophe, in 2001.
At least he owned the catastrophe part of the title.
He did. And CNET later ranked Boo.com as one of the greatest .com busts in history. It cemented its place in the Hall of Shame.
Before we wrap up and try to find the big lesson here, what happened to the domain itself? Boo.com is a catchy URL.
It went on a strange journey. In 2007, a company called Web Reservations International turned it into a travel site with hotel and hostel reviews. That lasted for about 3 years.
And today, if I type boo.com into my browser right now, where do I go?
As of the last check in July 2020, it redirects to hostelworld.com.
From high fashion to hostels, from champagne on Carnaby Street to a bunk bed in a shared room. That is a humbling journey for a domain name.
It is indeed.
And the people.
Did anyone survive the wreckage?
A few. Interestingly, only one original staff member, a guy named Bill Burley, worked for both the original Boo and the Fashion Mall relaunch. And Kate Boogle, who was an executive from Bloomingdale's, tried to relaunch it in autumn 2000, but the magic, or maybe the curse, was gone by then. So here we are, decades later. Why are we still talking about Boo.com? Why do I, or why should anyone listening, care about a company that died almost 25 years ago?
Because it is the perfect storm. It explains the entire era in one neat, disastrous package. It had the right idea. Fashion e-commerce is a massive trillion-dollar industry today. We all buy clothes online now. Companies like ASOS, Zalando, Net-a-Porter, they are all living the dream that Boo had.
So they weren't wrong about the what. People will buy clothes online.
They were just catastrophically wrong about the when and the how. It was terrible execution paired with a level of hubris that is just off the charts. They failed to respect the technical limitations of their era. You cannot force 2025 technology through a 1999 straw. It just doesn't work.
And the cash flow. The basic rules.
The basic rules of business always apply, even on the internet. You cannot spend $25 million on ads when you have zero revenue and insane fixed costs, assuming the venture capital tap will never, ever run dry.
It's a lesson in humility. Hubris kills companies.
It does, every time.
Okay, here's my final thought, and it's something I want everyone to think about as we sign off. If Boo.com had launched 5 years later, just 5 years, let's say 2004, 2005, broadband is becoming common, the iPhone is just around the corner, social media is starting to bubble up. Would Miss Boo be an Amazon-sized giant today? Or was that management style, that spend now, think later attitude, destined to fail regardless of the internet speed?
That is the ultimate question, isn't it? Was it the modem or was it the management? My gut says a management team that spends $25 million before opening the doors would have probably found a new and exciting way to fail in any era. But we will never really know.
A fascinating story. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into a true .com spectacular.
My pleasure. See you next time.